The night sky over the vast desert shimmered with stars, but one star moved differently. It wasn't a star at all. It was a ship, descending slowly and cautiously towards the barren Earth landscape. John Carter, hardened survivor and once an explorer, now lived a quiet life near the desert's edge. His peaceful existence was about to change. John had spent years living alone, far from the bustling cities, finding solace in the simplicity of desert life. He thought he had seen it all. Until tonight. As the ship landed with a soft thud in the sand, he couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Cautiously, he approached the ship, his heart pounding, but his mind steady. The metallic exterior of the vessel gleamed under the moonlight. With a sudden hiss, the door of the ship opened, revealing a silhouette, tall, slender, and distinctly alien. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She stepped forward, her movements graceful yet hesitant, as if she wasn't sure how she would be received. "Please," she spoke softly, her voice filled with desperation. "I need your help." John blinked, taken aback by the unexpected plea. He had heard stories of aliens visiting Earth, but never had he imagined one would ask him for assistance. Who are you?" he stammered, his usual calm demeanor shaken. "I am Zala, a princess from the planet Varn. Our world is at war, and I have nowhere else to turn. I beg you," she continued, her voice trembling, "take me as your servant. In return, I will offer you my loyalty, my knowledge, and whatever else you need." John stood in silence, processing her words. A part of him wanted to refuse. He had sworn off getting involved in anything after his last expedition had gone so wrong. But looking into Zala's eyes, he saw more than just an alien beauty. He saw someone who had lost everything, just like he once had. "Why me?" he finally asked, his voice softer now. "You are human," she replied, her gaze steady. "Your people are known across the galaxy for their resilience, their strength. I need that strength now more than ever." John sighed deeply, knowing that whatever path he chose next would change his life forever. "All right," he said after a long pause. "I don't know what's ahead, but I'll help you. You can stay here, and we'll figure this out together." Zala smiled, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Earthling. You won't regret this." As dawn approached, the sky began to lighten, casting soft pinks and oranges over the desert landscape. John led Zala toward his modest home, a small cabin hidden among the dunes. The quiet crunch of their footsteps on the sand was the only sound, aside from the gentle breeze that swept across the barren expanse. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. John gestured toward a chair. "Make yourself at home," he said, still trying to process the events of the night. Zala, her graceful form almost too large for the small space, sat down with a quiet elegance, her glowing eyes scanning the room with curiosity. "So," John began, pacing across the room, "you're a princess from some far-off planet, and you've come all the way here to Earth. Why now? What's really going on?" Zala's expression darkened as she leaned forward. "The war on Varn has been devastating," she said softly. "Our enemies, the Xanthar, are ruthless. They've destroyed entire cities, and my people are on the verge of collapse. I was sent here to find help, but when I arrived, I found that Earth has no knowledge of intergalactic politics, let alone the technology to assist in a war of this scale." John's brow furrowed. "So, you're saying you came here thinking we could save your planet?" "Not quite," Zala replied, shaking her head. "I came here hoping to find a new ally, someone who could help me understand human strength. Your kind has a unique way of surviving against all odds. I've studied your history. Earth has faced disasters, wars, and challenges beyond imagination, yet you always find a way to adapt. That's why I need you." John stopped pacing and looked at her, his mind racing. He had once been part of something bigger, an explorer, problem solver. but those days felt like a distant memory. "You're asking a lot," he said after a long pause. "I'm just one man, Zala. What makes you think I can do anything to help?" Zala's glowing eyes met his, filled with quiet determination. "Because humans don't give up. That's why I came to you." For a long moment, John said nothing. He could see the desperation in her eyes, the weight of responsibility she carried. Despite everything telling him to stay out of this, something inside him stirred. Maybe it was the spark of adventure he had long buried. Maybe it was the part of him that still believed in doing what was right. "All right," he finally said, his voice steady. "I'll help you, but I need to understand what we're up against. If you want me to be your ally, I need to know everything about this war, the Xanther, and what it will take to survive." Zala nodded, relief washing over her once again. "I will tell you everything, but first, I must swear my loyalty to you as your servant, as is the custom of my people." John blinked in surprise. "Servant? That's not necessary." "It is," Zala interrupted firmly. "For my people, loyalty is sacred. Once I swear my loyalty to you, it is unbreakable. We will be bound by honor, and I will serve you until my mission is complete." John stared at her, unsure of how to respond. "All right," he said slowly, "if that's how it's done, I won't argue." Zala stood, her regal form towering over him. She bowed her head, her hands crossed over her chest in a gesture of respect. "I, Princess Zala of Varn, pledge my loyalty to John Carter of Earth. From this day forward, I am your servant, bound by honor and duty." John felt a strange mix of emotions, disbelief, curiosity, and an odd sense of responsibility. He had just agreed to take on an alien princess as his servant, and now there was no turning back. As Zala straightened, her expression softened. "Now," she said, "let us begin. I will tell you everything about the Xanther and why they must be stopped." As the sun reached its zenith, casting sharp shadows through the windows of John's cabin, Zala began her tale. She sat across from him at the small wooden table, her glowing eyes narrowing as she spoke of her people's ancient struggle. "The Xanthar are not like anything you've ever faced, John. They are a race of conquerors, ruthless and cunning. For centuries, they've roamed the galaxy, seeking out worlds rich in resources, enslaving entire civilizations for their own gain. Varn was once a peaceful world, but we had what they desired. Our energy crystals, which power their war machines." John leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Energy crystals? Sounds like something out of a science fiction movie." Zala allowed herself a small smile. "I suppose to your people it would seem that way, but to us, it is life. These crystals fuel our technology, power our cities, and allow us to travel the stars. The Xanther's hunger for them has pushed our people to the brink of extinction." John frowned, trying to wrap his head around the magnitude of the situation. "So they're after your world's resources. That's why they attacked?" Zala nodded. "Yes, they will stop at nothing to take what they want. Our defenses have held them off for now, but we are running out of time. That's why I came to Earth, to learn how your people have survived against overwhelming odds." John rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of what Zala was asking of him. "But how can I help with that? I'm not a soldier, I'm not a strategist. I'm just a guy who used to explore the world, and now I barely leave this place." Zala's expression softened. "You underestimate yourself, John. Human history is filled with examples of ordinary people rising to extraordinary challenges. You are a species that thrives on adversity. I believe that you, with your knowledge and experience, can help me find a way to outthink the Xanthar." John chuckled darkly. "Outthink an alien race bent on destruction. Sounds like a long shot." Zala's gaze remained steady. "It may be, but we have no other choice. If the Xanthar break through our defenses, they will take everything, our people, our culture, our world. And once they are done with Varn, they will move on to the next planet. Perhaps even Earth. That last sentence sent a chill down John's spine. Earth, you think they'd come here? They would, Zala said gravely. If they find out what your world possesses, the natural resources, the unique life forms, they will come, and Earth is not prepared for such an invasion. John exhaled sharply. He had spent his life exploring the wonders of Earth, but now it seemed those very wonders could attract something far more dangerous than humanity had ever faced. He felt the burden of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. All right, he said after a long pause. Let's say I agree to help you. What's the plan? How do we stop these Xanthar? Zala's expression brightened slightly, as if his agreement had sparked a glimmer of hope. The Xanthar are powerful, but they are not invincible. They rely heavily on their technology and their superior numbers. But what they lack is creativity. They are predictable, driven by greed and conquest. That is where we have the advantage. John raised an eyebrow. You think we can outmaneuver them? I do, Zala replied, her voice firm. But we need to act quickly. I have access to knowledge and technology that could give us an edge. With your help, we can devise a strategy that they won't expect. John sat quietly for a moment, thinking. He had always thrived on challenges, and this was the biggest one yet. The idea of taking on an intergalactic threat was terrifying, but also exhilarating. Perhaps this was the purpose he had been searching for all along. All right, he said, a determined look in his eyes. Let's do this. We'll find a way to stop the Xanthar, and we'll protect both Varn and Earth. Zala smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. Thank you, John. With you by my side, I believe we can succeed. As they began to discuss their next steps, John realized how much his life had changed in a single day. He had gone from living in isolation to being at the center of an intergalactic war. And though the road ahead was uncertain, he felt a strange sense of excitement, a feeling that perhaps, just maybe, he was exactly where he was meant to be. The days that followed were a blur of activity. John and Zala spent hours poring over maps, blueprints, and alien technology that Zala had brought with her. John had never seen anything like it before. The holographic displays, the intricate machinery, the weapons that looked straight out of his wildest dreams. Yet, Zala's calm and methodical explanations made it all seem less overwhelming. Their plan was ambitious. They needed to use Earth's resources and human ingenuity to create something that would catch the Xanthar off guard. Zala's people had been fighting for survival for years, relying on their advanced technology, but they had been doing so predictably. The Xanthar were used to their tactics, and that was why they were losing. John's job was to come up with a plan that was outside the box, something that Xanthar wouldn't anticipate. You think humans can build this? John asked one day, staring at a holographic blueprint that Zala had projected. It was a sleek, powerful device, something that looked like it could bring down a starship, but it required materials John wasn't sure Earth even had. With your creativity, yes, Zala replied, her voice filled with confidence. Your planet has everything we need to construct it. The key is in how we use your resources in ways that Xanthar won't expect. They underestimate humans because they don't see you as a threat. That's our advantage. John smirked. Well, we've always been good at surprising people. As they worked together, John began to understand more about Zala. She wasn't just a princess. She was a leader, a strategist, and a warrior. Her people had relied on her to find a way to save them, and she was determined not to fail. John admired her strength and resolve, and he felt a growing respect for her. They were becoming partners, working side by side toward a common goal. But there were still doubts. One night, as they sat outside the cabin beneath the stars, John voiced his concerns. Zala, what if we fail? He asked quietly. What if the Xanthar are just too strong, and no matter what we do, it's not enough? Zala looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the light of the stars. There is always a chance of failure, John. But that's not a reason to give up. My people have been fighting for years without hope, But we continue because we believe in something greater. You once told me humans are resilient because they never give up. Is that not true? John nodded slowly. Yeah, it's true, but it's different when you're going up against something that seems unbeatable. Zala placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm and reassuring. The Xanthar may be powerful, but they are not unbeatable. They lack what we have: creativity, determination, and the will to fight for something more than just conquest. That is why we will win. John looked at her, seeing the fire in her eyes, and he felt something shift inside him. She was right. The Xanthar were just another challenge, one that seemed impossible, but so had many other challenges humans had faced throughout history. And somehow, they had always managed to survive. All right, he said, a new resolve in his voice. Let's make this plan work. The next few days were spent gathering the materials they needed. Zala had given John a list of elements that were common on Earth but rare on other planets. Together, they scoured the desert, using scanners and tools from Zala's ship to locate the resources. It was grueling work, but neither of them complained. They were focused, driven by the urgency of the mission. One evening, as they returned to the cabin with their latest haul of materials, they were greeted by an unexpected visitor. A man stood outside the cabin, watching them with a calm but curious expression. John immediately tensed, instinctively stepping in front of Zala. "Who are you?" John demanded, eyeing the stranger warily. The man smiled, his eyes flicking between John and Zala. "Name's Marcus," he said, his voice casual. "I live out here in the desert too. Saw some strange lights in the sky a few nights ago. Figured I'd check it out." John's heart raced. He had been careful to keep a low profile, not wanting anyone to find out about Zala or the ship. But now, it seemed they had been discovered. "We're not looking for trouble," John said cautiously, trying to gauge the man's intentions. "Neither am I," Marcus replied, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "But I know you're not from around here. And from the looks of it," he glanced at Zala, "neither is she." John felt a surge of panic, but before he could respond, Zala stepped forward. "I am from a distant world," she said calmly. "I came here seeking help, and John has agreed to assist me." Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "An alien princess, huh? That's a new one, even for me." John clenched his jaw. "Look, Marcus, whatever you think you saw, it's not what you think. We're just trying to—" "I'm not here to cause trouble," Marcus interrupted, his tone serious now. "In fact, I think I can help. You see, I've been out here in the desert for a long time, and I know a thing or two about keeping secrets. You're not the first ones to bring something strange to this part of the world." John exchanged a glance with Zala, unsure of whether to trust the stranger. But as Marcus spoke, something about him seemed genuine. He wasn't there to expose them. He wanted to be part of whatever they were doing. "You want to help?" John asked slowly. "Why?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe I'm just looking for a little adventure. Or maybe," he added, his eyes glinting with mischief, "I'm curious about what kind of trouble you're planning to stir up." Zala smiled faintly, sensing the potential ally in Marcus. "If you wish to help, we won't turn you away. But know this, what we are about to face is far more dangerous than anything you've ever encountered." Marcus chuckled. "Sounds like fun." With Marcus now on their side, John and Zala's small team began to take shape. The days were filled with planning, gathering resources, and constructing the device Zala had designed. The piece of alien technology that could potentially cripple the Xanthar fleet. Marcus proved to be more useful than John had initially expected, his knowledge of the desert and its hidden resources providing a vital edge in their efforts. One evening, as the device neared completion, the group gathered around a makeshift table in the cabin. A holographic projection of the Xanthar fleet hovered above them, its ominous form casting a faint glow on their faces. Zala pointed to a large ship in the center of the fleet, the Xanthar command vessel. "This is our target," Zala said, her voice steady. If we can disable this ship, we'll cut off their ability to coordinate the rest of the fleet. It will give my people a fighting chance to regroup and launch a counterattack. John leaned forward, studying the projection. And the device we're building, this thing can take it down. Zala nodded. If we can get close enough to activate it, yes. The device emits an energy pulse that will disrupt their systems, rendering the command ship temporarily powerless. But getting close enough will be the tricky part, Marcus added, scratching his chin thoughtfully. These guys aren't exactly going to let us waltz in with a shiny new toy. Zala's eyes narrowed. That's where the element of surprise comes in. The Xanthar don't know about Earth. They won't be expecting an attack from this planet. We'll use that to our advantage. John's mind raced as he considered the plan. It was risky, more than risky. It was borderline suicidal, but it was their only shot. If they could pull this off, they would cripple the Xanthar fleet, giving Zala's people the time they needed to rally. And if they failed, well, failure wasn't an option. I'm in, John said firmly, his decision made. We've come this far, no turning back now. Marcus grinned. Guess I'm in too. Never thought I'd be taking down alien warships, but hey, life's full of surprises. Zala smiled, her confidence in the group growing. Thank you, both of you. We have a long road ahead, but with your help, I believe we can succeed. The following morning, they set out, using Zala's ship, which had remained cloaked and undetected by Earth's technology. They prepared for the journey to intercept the Xanthar fleet. The ship was small but fast, its sleek design meant for stealth rather than combat. John sat in the cockpit, his hands gripping the controls tightly as Zala navigated. Marcus sat behind them, his usual carefree demeanor replaced with a focused intensity. They all knew what was at stake. As they approached the edge of Earth's atmosphere, Zala activated the ship's cloaking mechanism. We'll remain invisible to their scanners for now, she said, her voice calm. But once we get within range of the command ship, we'll only have a few minutes to deploy the device. John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. Let's hope that's enough time. The minutes ticked by in silence as they hurtled through space. John's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts about the plan, about what might go wrong, about what would happen if they failed. But he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. This was it. No more doubts, no more hesitation. Suddenly, the Xanthar fleet came into view. The massive warships loomed ahead, their dark, angular shapes cutting through the stars like silent predators. Zala's ship was tiny in comparison, dwarfed by the sheer scale of the alien armada. There, Zala said, pointing to the largest ship in the center. That's the command vessel. We need to get close enough to attach the device to their hull. John took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. Let's do this. Zala guided the ship toward the command vessel, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. They weaved through the fleet, staying just out of reach of the Xanthar's sensors. John watched the alien ships with a mixture of awe and dread. Each one was a fortress, bristling with weapons, ready to rain destruction on anyone who stood in their way. As they neared the command vessel, Zala's voice cut through the silence. Now, we're in range. John and Marcus sprang into action, quickly activating the device they had spent weeks building. It hummed to life, emitting a faint blue glow as it prepared to release the energy pulse. Just a little closer, Marcus muttered, his eyes glued to the readouts on the screen. Come on. Come on. Suddenly, alarms blared inside the ship. John's heart sank as Zala's face hardened. They've detected us. Damn it. John cursed, gripping the controls. What do we do? Zala's hands flew over the console. We're too close to turn back now. We have to deploy the device. Quickly. John guided the ship closer to the hull of the command vessel, weaving between the massive structures as Xanthar ships began to mobilize. The tension in the air was palpable as the seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Now, Zala shouted. John hit the release mechanism, and the device shot out from the ship, attaching itself to the hull of the Xanthar command vessel with a soft clank. It began to emit the energy pulse immediately, a wave of blue light spreading across the surface of the ship. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the lights on the command vessel flickered. The massive ship seemed to shudder as the energy pulse rippled through its systems, disrupting its power core. "We did it," Zala whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We actually did it." But their celebration was cut short. A squadron of Xanthar fighters had broken away from the fleet and was heading straight for them. "Time to go," Marcus shouted. John didn't need to be told twice. He yanked the controls, sending their ship into a sharp dive as they sped away from the Xanthar fleet. The fighters were fast, but Zala's ship was faster. They weaved and dodged through the stars, narrowly avoiding the enemy's fire. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they broke free of the Xanthar's range. "We're clear," John said, his voice hoarse from the tension. "We're clear." Zala leaned back in her seat, her eyes closing in relief. "We've bought ourselves some time. Now we must return to Varn and prepare for the final battle." The journey back to Varn was tense. Though the Xanthar fleet had been temporarily crippled, John knew they hadn't won yet. Their mission had been a success, but the real fight was still ahead. The Xanthar would recover, and when they did, they would come with more fury than ever before. Zala guided the ship through the stars, her expression focused and determined. She had contacted her people, and they were preparing for their return. The news of the Xanthar command ship's disabling had spread quickly, and there was hope again on Varn. A hope that hadn't been felt in years. John sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring out at the vastness of space. He had never imagined his life would take this turn. Just days ago, he had been living in isolation, trying to escape the world. Now, he was part of an intergalactic war, fighting alongside an alien princess to save her people. As they approached Varn, the planet came into view. A vibrant world with shimmering cities and sprawling landscapes. Though the scars of war were visible, even from space, Zala's face softened as she looked at her home, her emotions swirling beneath her calm exterior. "This is it," she said quietly. "We've given them a chance. Now we must fight to ensure they survive." John nodded, his resolve solidifying. "I'm with you. We'll finish this." When they landed, a small group of Varnian soldiers and officials greeted them. Zala quickly began giving orders, directing preparations for the final battle. The disabling of the Xanthar command ship had bought them time, but not much. The Xanthar would be back, and they needed to be ready. John watched as Zala moved through the crowd, her authority unquestioned. Despite the chaos around them, there was a sense of hope. The people of Varn had a leader they believed in, and now they had a plan. It was time to fight back. As the preparations continued, John found himself in a large hangar where Varnian ships were being repaired and armed. He was approached by a tall, broad-shouldered Varnian commander, his silver armor gleaming in the dim light. "You must be the human who helped Princess Zala," the commander said, his voice gruff but respectful. John nodded. "I guess that's me." The commander extended a hand. "I'm Commander Vale. On behalf of my people, thank you. What you've done has given us a fighting chance." John shook his hand, feeling the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. "We're not done yet." Vale nodded, his expression grim. "No, we're not. But we'll fight with everything we have." The day of the battle came quickly. The Xanthar fleet, now partially repaired, was spotted on the horizon, looming ominously over Varn. The skies darkened as their ships blocked out the sun, a chilling reminder of the enemy's strength. But this time, Varn was ready. Zala stood on the command platform, dressed in sleek armor that glinted under the dim light. She addressed the gathered soldiers, her voice clear and strong. "Today, we fight for Varn. We fight for our future, our people, and our freedom. The Xanthar believe they can crush us, but they are wrong. We will stand together, and we will win." A cheer erupted from the soldiers, their spirits lifted by her words. John stood at the edge of the platform, watching the crowd. He had never seen such determination, and it fueled his own resolve. This was their last stand, and they would give everything they had. The battle began with a deafening roar. Varnian ships took to the sky, clashing with the Xanthar fleet in a dazzling display of light and fire. The ground forces surged forward, armed with weapons designed to exploit the weaknesses of the Xanthar's technology. John fought alongside Zala and Vale, his heart pounding in his chest as the chaos of battle surrounded him. The Xanthar were relentless, their advanced weaponry cutting through the battlefield with deadly precision. But the Varnians were fierce, their knowledge of the terrain and their newfound hope driving them forward. Explosions rocked the battlefield as ships fell from the sky and soldiers clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat. John had never been in a fight like this, but his survival instincts kicked in, and he fought with everything he had. Every move was a matter of life and death. Zala fought beside him, her movements swift and deadly. She was a warrior, as skilled in battle as she was in strategy. Together, they pushed forward, cutting through the Xanthar forces with a determination that seemed unstoppable. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Xanthar unleashed their final weapon, a massive war machine that lumbered across the battlefield, its towering form casting a shadow over everything. It was equipped with weapons that could decimate entire squads in seconds. "We have to take that thing down," John shouted over the roar of battle. Zala nodded, her eyes narrowing. "Follow me." Together, they made their way toward the war machine, dodging blasts and fighting off Xanthar soldiers as they went. The machine loomed ahead, its cannons charging for another devastating strike. Zala reached for the small device they had used to disable the Xanthar command ship. "This should work," she said, her voice tense. "But we need to get close enough to attach it." John nodded, his heart racing. "Let's go." They charged forward, dodging enemy fire as they made their way to the base of the war machine. Zala moved swiftly, attaching the device to the machine's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden jolt, the machine shuddered, its systems shorting out. The massive war machine let out a groan as it collapsed, its weapons going dark. A cheer erupted from the Varnian forces as the tide of battle turned in their favor. With the Xanthar's greatest weapon destroyed, their forces began to fall back, retreating under the onslaught of the Varnians. The battle was fierce, but by the end of the day, the Xanthar fleet had been driven from Varn's skies. As the dust settled and the last of the Xanthar forces fled into space, a quiet fell over the battlefield. The people of Varn had won. John stood beside Zala on the ridge, overlooking the battlefield. The city below was scared, but it still stood. The people of Varn had fought for their home, and they had won their future. "We did it," John said, his voice filled with disbelief. Zala smiled, though her eyes were weary. "Yes, we did." The two of them stood in silence, watching as the sun set over the horizon. The Xanthar had been defeated, but the cost had been high. Yet, there was hope now, a hope that had been reignited by the courage of a small group of people who refused to give up. "We'll rebuild," Zala said quietly. "My people will rise again." John nodded. "And Earth will be ready, in case the Xanthar ever come our way." Zala turned to him, her expression softening. "You have been more than a servant, John. You've been a friend. Thank you." John smiled. "I'd say we're partners, not servant and master." Zala's eyes glinted with amusement. "Partners, then." Together, they stood under the fading light, knowing that the war was over, but their journey had only just begun.